welcome to another episode of HR Growth Network podcast. I am so happy to have you here. It's always super exciting to continue our conversations. Thanks for joining in.
Oh, great to be here, Toy, and thank you. Another exciting episode for the listeners.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And this morning, we're going to be talking about the importance of networking, especially in a new environment, getting in as a senior HR professional. That's something that we feel our listeners need to know about, and obviously if they can avoid some of the initial pitfalls that we fell into, they'll be really glad to share.
Yeah, no, awesome. And thank you for that. We talk about networking and community, and it's just such an important part of our journey, right? So, just from a stats point of view, I wanted to share that, the network is responsible for the fulfilling of 85% of job vacancies. I mean, that's incredible. So, it's
That's
around the
huge. That's a huge
85% of
turnaround.
job vacancies through networking. And I mean, I was reading that's the source of HubSpot, and just another fun fact: 7 out of 10 job openings are not publicly advertised.
Oh
So
my
it just
god,
shows you it's not what you know, it's who you know,
it's who
and
you
that's where
know.
that kind of expression really kind of just takes on that meaning and kind of weight of importance of networking.
Yeah.
So I think for this podcast, Toyin, if you'll allow me, I've made a couple of points around importance of networking that I wanted to just run through with you and your listeners, if that's okay.
Absolutely, Gwen, go for it. I always love to hear your point.
No, thank you. So, I mean, I think just a few points on the importance of networking. Why do we network? And then I want to just share a few thoughts on how do we network. So, practical examples. So, networking is really just about building your reputation, within the industry. And through networking and building those relationships, that I mean, Toy, and for you and your HR growth network, you become a reliable, supportive industry expert, and that is so important. So just build your reputation, and then it makes you noticeable. I mean, look, Toyin, through your LinkedIn profile, how noticeable you've come, how many followers, So it's really just about that visibility and becoming noticeable. And then, just the two more points. So the one is around it strengthens your support network. So, I think as you build credibility and you build your reputation, it's really important that through that network that support network that you can reach out to people around, soundboarding, if you're having a breakdown at work or if you've changed jobs. I mean, when I started, we were talking about that networking is, 85% and 7 out of 10. That's through that support network,
Absolutely.
strengthening that. And then one for you, Toyin, and for all the young entrepreneurs, HR entrepreneurs out there, it promotes
Perfect.
business growth. It takes your business to the next level. So it creates that awareness, it allows for expansion of your business. It encourages you to stay on top of trends, HR trends, which we see you doing all the time. And it just, allows you to get to know your competitor a little bit. Like, who are you competing against? So those are just some of the thoughts around why networking is so important. And I think before we go on to just how do you do it practically, how does that kind of sit with you, Toyin? Is there anything that you would want to add as an entrepreneur and an HR professional to that?
I love those points. I love the points you've just shared, Gwen, because again, everyone's talking about, especially when you're in a new environment, you're in a new space, the first question that's on your mind getting off the plane is how can I find a job? Right? And you're feeling a lot out of the water because this is not your environment, this is not your turf. You're new in that space, you're new in the country. So there's that reasonable fear of how do I go about finding a job? Do I go ahead and apply on LinkedIn? Do I go to Indeed? Do I go on Read? Do I set up my accounts and wait for these opportunities to find me? But then the network is a counterintuitive advice, which is that you find the networks, you find the jobs. Yes, you're putting your CV there, you're applying there, but the data paints a very compelling picture of why you need to get into the act of networking. If 80 something percent of the jobs, 7 out of 10 jobs are filled via networks, then obviously whatever you're doing on LinkedIn, on Read, on Indeed, and those platforms are really powerful in just getting visibility on the jobs, is 3%, is 3 out of 7. It's a 13% at best. So that means that there is that hidden job market where you need to be tapping into, especially if you're a listener, you're a senior HR professional, you're moving into another country, you haven't got the contacts, you haven't got the connect. Frankly, you don't know the lay of the land. So you then networking is your fastest approach. And I absolutely love that. And I really just wanted to highlight that point, spotlight it to our listeners so that they can take it away with them that the jobs are coming in through the networks. And yes, you might say, oh, no one knows me. But that's not the right thing to say. Is say, no one knows me yet. They don't know you yet.
Absolutely.
They when they know you, they would absolutely love you because I'm sure you're top notch. But they don't know you yet. And you can't be the
Yes.
world's best kept secret, hiding under your bushel, hiding under I've just moved with family. I moved with family and 3 kids. When you moved with your husband, you were setting up house. So everyone has that other life where we're managing all of these other priorities. But if you want to get into an HR space, you want to get into an HR space in another country, networking is the way to go. So I'm really loving this point, Gwen, and I really want to hear your thoughts around how do we do it. And then maybe when we talk about how we do it, I would love us to talk about when we should do it, because that's something that
Yeah.
is also very crucial.
No, and I love your point around yet, I mean, because we're so, I don't have a job and war is to me, but it's just changing that language because that changing your language also changes your mindset. So
Absolutely.
I'm not good at it yet.
Yes.
I don't know how to do it
Yes.
yet, because that just tells your brain that, there's hope out
It's in
there. You haven't
progress.
quite achieved it yet. So maybe let's just take a couple of minutes to have a look at practically where and how. Okay, so you've just come into a new country, or even if you're in the country and you're not great at networking, what are some of the tips? What are some of the things that kind of, yeah, little gems that have worked for me? So people have different preferences where they want to. You've mentioned, I mean, LinkedIn, so powerful, registering on Read and Indeed, and, absolutely key areas. But, if you go and, you Google HR networking in my area, it comes, you'll see, just, Google knows everything.
I'm telling
It's
you.
just that is such a menu for us. We don't have to struggle anymore. We have all these tools
Yes, we
available. I
do.
mean, this morning I actually, just in prep for this podcast, I just went in and had a look at HR networking events. And, it came up with there's an HR summit that's happening in October this year, and it's free. 4 days HR summit, guest speakers. I mean, why would you not want to
Be there.
register for that? You know, so it may be face to face, it may be online,
Yeah.
but as we say, it's about building your reputation and getting your name out there.
Yes.
You know, if you, from a UK point of view, very big into CIPD
Yes.
qualifications. So
Yes.
they've got some conferences and seminars and exhibitions for free, you know. So I think there's a whole list of networking opportunities, but I think you can know it, but it's about taking action.
Doing it.
So what does that mean for you? And to be able as an HR professional to say, you know what, part of my goal setting, part of my action taking is I am going to attend a networking event. What does that look like? Is it once a month, once a quarter? and just to be diligent in that, because before you know it, the year is gone.
The year is
So it's
gone, the
being
time will go.
intentional. It's being intentional about saying, okay, I need to network. I know it's important for my career. I know it's important for future, be that opportunities or business growth. So it's just about that intentionality of saying once a month, once a quarter, whatever it is, you're going to go out and network with people and keeping it alive. I mean, I always say networking is a little bit about it's like a relationship, right?
Yeah,
You can't just go in once and hope that everyone's gonna, give you a job, and you
it's
have to.
like
It's
that.
a relationship you have to keep active on. So, yeah, that's just what's your experience been with networking,
I love
Toyin?
that point you said, Gwen, about you can't just go in once. And I also love you sharing the digital perspective because, again, we're in a digital age and a lot of people are leveraging technology. So we need to do that. But then I put my hands in the air. I'm a bit old school. So I will tell you, I'll tell you from my experience what I did. Just adding complementary to yours as well was I just went through my phone. I went through my contact list and said, who needs to know that I'm in the UK? Like, who needs to be aware that I'm here? Who's already here? Because again, you know how people move and you may not be aware they've moved, or they moved and you're aware they've moved but you haven't touched base with them in a while. So I looked through my phone and then I found about 6 or 7 HR people that I knew were in the UK who needed to be aware that I was in the UK as well. And I could tap into them being here already to say, how's it going? What's working? What's not working? What's the advice? I remember getting into a very long conversation with one of my contacts that I called to just say, hi, how you doing? I was like, hey, you're in the UK. Hey, I'm in the UK as well. And it was just that act of you going through your phone contact list. I'm sure every single person, we've got more than 100 people on our phones. And that's me just being modest. Go through your contact list. Who's in the UK? Who's been in your network before? Because again, let's talk to the introverts in the room. Someone might be sitting here and thinking, I love what Toy and Gwen is sharing, but I'm a quiet person. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want my business out there. That's understandable. There's a slightly different way of doing it. That's not to say that if you're not out there, you can't have a progressive career or you can't have a successful career. It just means that you're going to have to do things differently in a way that suits your personality. So for me, the old school approach of just going through my contact list, calling up people to say, hey, how are you doing? It's been a while. I'm in the UK. I noticed you might be in the UK as well. And just having that chat, and someone says, oh, I was in the UK, I've moved to Canada, or I was in the UK, I've moved to the US. And it's just that almost like bringing people up to speed with where you are, what your plans are, and just sharing as well, sharing and being very receptive of where they are and seeing what advice you can give to support where they are. Now, the interesting thing that I would like us to then talk about now, Gwen, is when should you network? Should you leave it too late? Should you leave it too early? There's that thing about also not wanting, some people not wanting to disclose their plans a bit too early. But when should you network? In my opinion, and I'll let you chime in on this one, I don't think you should wait until you need it. A network is best to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Because when you need it and you're then reaching out, it does come around as being very phony because people then feel like, oh, now she needs something. Now she's reaching out to me. Where was she 2 years ago? Where was she 6 months ago? So that speaks to the intentionality which you spoke about when around how do you sort of sit back and say, where am I now in relation to where I'm going? And there's a lot of self-awareness that I feel the HR community, we support the workers, we support our team members to be very aware of where they are in their journey, in their growth. And maybe that's because we're in charge of their development plans. But the question I have is who's in charge of our own development plans? Who's helping you track what to do? And that's the beauty of being in a coaching relationship where you have someone who's actively supporting you and saying, here is where you said you wanted to be. Here is where you are right now. That's the gap. And these are the things we probably need to do to bridge that gap. Having a strong network is an asset every HR person, regardless of their level, should aspire to have and maintain. Because, like you said, I'm not just going to show up once and say, hey, I'm here, and then disappear after I've been supported for whatever the need was at that time. I need to show up and show up consistently. And then in showing up, I'm not going to be asking all of the time. And that's something we can delve into a bit more. But in my experience, you shouldn't wait until you need the network before you cultivate the network. You should cultivate network as sort of like your state. That's your modus operandi. That's how you do your things. You have a network. You're actively connecting with people. What are your thoughts, Gwen?
Oh, I love it. Oh, Toyin, you're just so on spot. And at the end of the day, it's about you sitting back and saying, how do I set myself up for success? And
Absolutely. Set
networking is
myself
one
up
of
for
those.
success.
One of those tools is for you to, that sets you up for success. When is the right time to network? All the time. Networking should be actually all the time
Yes.
because day to day, whether we are formalizing those relationships, we're always networking, right? So we're always networking. For the shy people out there, I get it. It's difficult to walk into a room and, some people are just really uncomfortable saying, hi,
Yeah.
I'm Gwen and this is who I am and tell me about yourself, and I think for those shy people out there, I think the challenge to you today is to say, okay, you know what? How do I start small? What is one thing that I'm going to do to try and, break out of this shyness? And that might just be you go join a group of people,
Yep.
because networking events is not about clicks.
No.
Yes, you get to know people, but it's about being able to just go in and say, hi, if people say, tell me a little about yourself. Networking is also a lot around active listening. So you
Absolutely.
don't have to go in there and like give your whole story.
Your
It's just you're
speech.
starting a process of active listening. And, but one thing that I've found with networking is, there's this thing of, I'll be in touch with you, or let's connect, let's be in touch, and then you don't do it, right? So I think the
Mm.
call out for me that's really key from a networking point of view is if you say you're going to connect, if you say you're going to do something, if someone owes you something, be diligent to see it through. Connect with the person, follow up with them because uh, I love it when I go to a networking event and then someone will say, okay, I'll be in touch with you. When you get that email, it just talks to that whole thing of building, like their reputation for
Absolutely.
me then becomes solid because they had said what they're going to do,
And they did it.
So I think around the networking opportunity, never too late, I do find, and it's my view, and if no one shares it, that's okay. But HR people are not the best networkers. I don't know
Mm.
why,
Mm.
and it's really to just, and that's why I'm so inspired by you, Toyin, because you're creating this network through your HR growth. Like I
Yeah.
really salute you and acknowledge you for that because you're creating this platform for networking and for HR professionals, young and old. And when I say young and old, I'm not talking age, I'm talking, where you are in your journey.
Yeah.
So, you just really set the platform and great example. So, yeah, and I mean, you're becoming noticeable now, Toyin, out
And
there. You're building your business, girl.
thanks, Gwen. And I do share your sentiment as well that we're not the best at putting ourselves out there. And that could be because it's a very weighty responsibility to look after people. It's really
Yeah.
weighty. You're carrying the weight of the workforce. Albeit you shouldn't be carrying it in a way that is weighing you down. But then that's the part of the narrative that we are seeking to change by producing, this set of podcasts. And just a couple of final, thoughts from me on this is to say thank you so much for sharing. I was just reflecting on one of our previous episodes, the very first one, and you mentioned you been at BMW for 20 years. And I said to myself, that is a lot of experience packed in there. You're such a gem to have on the show. I am so happy and chuffed that you're here. And I do know that someone out there is going to tap into this wealth of experience. Because, I mean, think about it. That's almost a total of 30 years of experience right there that you've got, Gwen. And that's something that not many HR people have. And if they have it, they may not be accessible. They may not be accessible in sharing their truth, sharing their journey. And that's the purpose of this podcast, making senior HR people more accessible to support one another and then to support the next generation of HR people. And I absolutely love you for sharing these gems with us. I'm really
Oh,
excited. Really excited.
thank you, Toy. And you know, you mentioned something now, which is, I think it's a really good preamble into a next podcast of back to basics, right? So,
Mm.
back to basics from an HR point of view, back to basics of if you're looking to move to a new country. So yeah, really excited to pick up that podcast with you. And Toyin, as always, absolute pleasure. Great to be with you, and just hope that you know, you and your listeners are just, yeah, just absolutely excited. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Gwen. And then see you next week. Bye.
See you next week. Bye bye.